Hey y'all, let's talk about resilience. To start talking about resilience, I think it's oftentimes really helpful to just say, like, what's resilience mean to us? Particularly in this day and age where resilience gets thrown around a lot with words like grit and survival and toughness. But I've come to learn that I actually don't think that that's what resilience is. I think resilience is actually something completely different. One of my favorite definitions of resilience comes from one of my brilliant teachers and inspiration, Alta Starr, who I was introduced to through my work with Generative Somatics. Alta is a writer, organizer, and teacher, and is one of the leaders of this organization called BOLD, which stands for Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity. One thing that Alta left me with is this definition of resilience. Alta defines resilience as our ability to connect and cultivate our innate aliveness. What's really amazing about this definition in particular is that resilience is about innate aliveness. That means that resilience is something that we come into this world with. Resilience is something that we already have. That is why I think resilience is not about surviving. Your innate aliveness is about experiencing the fullness of your being. When we're surviving, we're just getting by. When I'm just getting by, my experience of myself is actually really limited. Resilience can be this thing that's actually about the bigness of who we are. What's even more exciting about this work is that it goes on to be able to say that there's actually qualities of resilience. How do we know that we're tapping into our innate aliveness? What's that feel like? In Generative Somatics, they actually do the work of actually being able to identify these qualities of resilience. And those qualities are hope and possibility, creativity, awe, and love. We can actually look into the world from when we're feeling these things. One example that I've shared with a lot of people is the work of Nick Cave, who's an artist based in Chicago. There's this video that happened in Detroit where Nick collaborated with students from the Detroit School of Arts to perform a piece that they would call Heard Detroit. Heard Detroit is a dance piece and musical number and a moving sculpture piece all kind of rolled into one, where a parade of bejeweled horse costumes come out and do kind of a herding parade to live instrumentation. In the video, there are scenes of young musicians practicing the pieces, dancers preparing, and them suiting up and going out into the world and creating such a spectacle. When I watch it, I get goosebumps, right? I get a feeling in the pit of my stomach. I get this rising in my back. And for me, that's how I oftentimes experience awe. This kind of mix of excitement and for me, a little bit of terror. This terror that is respecting the magnitude of what I'm experiencing. And there's a practice that we all can do to try and unfold this for ourselves. For us, we do this through a series of interviews. And these interviews can be done alone, they can be done in partnership, and they can be done in a large group. So I may invite you to do this by yourself now, considering what the world is like right now. And take about 12 minutes, meaning that you want to give yourself about 3 minutes for each question, and there are 4. So the first question is, when do you feel possibility? The second question is, when do you feel creative? The third is, when do you feel awe? And the last one is, when do you feel love? After the interview, we encourage you to try and notice what came about. What comes might be a surprise. For me, when I did this for the first time, I was realizing that there was a lot in my life that gave me these sensations of resilience that I was actively blocking. I realized that video games were a deep place for me to feel creativity and to feel possibility. But I thought video games are something I shouldn't engage in, that my time should be spent doing more important things. But this practice helped me to realize I needed to feel a lot of resilience, and video games was a way for me to access that. Take that idea, right? That what comes out of this. If it's video games, if it's writing, if it's running, if it's being online, if it's Instagram, if it's Twitter, whatever it is for you, just notice it. And ideally try not to judge it. Once you've kind of noticed what are the things that give you these qualities of resilience, try and identify maybe one, maybe two practices that you could take into the world, that you could fold into your life. When I realized that video games is my thing, I just made 5 minutes of my day about playing video games. I became a happier person. I became a better parent, all because I allowed myself to do the thing that made me feel alive. When making this shift into a practice, there's a couple things you might want to keep in mind. The first thing I would kind of float to you is to be gentle with yourself. This may be something that you have blocked. This may be something that you haven't done in years. And so with that in mind, you may want to choose something that you can be really gentle with. The second thing that you want to keep in mind is that you want to build in a little bit of accountability for yourself. And it doesn't have to be harsh. It can be really soft. But give yourself a time frame. I'm going to go running once a week. I'm going to play video games 5 minutes a day. Then, if you can, build in like a checkpoint. For me, when I went running, I also started texting my aunt and my mom my mileage. And they like to text me their workout updates, right? And so there's this build of kind of mutual accountability to one another. I had a friend who built a resilience practice of writing in the morning. And from that practice, she would just sit and write for herself, and then she would email it to herself. So the last thing I would actually say is that resilience can feel like this huge thing. But I think with this definition and with these practices, it can be something that we tap into regularly. Because when we know what makes us feel alive, we can reach for it when times get tough. It is also something that we can build into a routine in our lives that'll keep us resilient in moments, good or bad.